This is the Royal Enfield Scram 411, and as we all know, motorbikes are the ultimate form of freedom. But could this be the ultimate version of that? In this video, I find out. Now, I've had this Royal Enfield for about a week now, so I've done plenty of riding on it, and it's a joy to ride. It really is. It's back to the basics, like all Royal Enfields are. There's no gizmos and electronic aids, and well, the basic ones are there, like ABS, etc. But nothing that interferes with the machine and the rider. It's all about the connection between the rider and what's between his legs. And I don't mean his gentleman's parts, I mean his motorcycle. And although it's not a very powerful bike, it doesn't need to be, and that's not what it's about. So I think a lot of people get hooked on the point that it's only got 24 horsepower, but that's all it needs, and it's plenty enough for this kind of machine. And it really is just a joy to ride. This video is sponsored by Car Vertical. Now, if you're looking at purchasing any second-hand vehicle, whether it's a motorbike, one of these, or a car, then Car Vertical is a must-do before you buy it. All you need to do is click the link in my description and head to the website and type in the license plate or VIN number of the vehicle, and it will give you a full comprehensive report of that vehicle's history. So it scans through loads of different car databases, motorcycle databases, auction databases, crash databases, and gives you a thorough report of any altercations or problems in this car's history. So I was looking at this Alfa Romeo Stelvio last night, and you can see from this report that I've done that it's not looking good for this car. So it's been recorded as stolen in 2020, you can see that on the report, 2023, and then the odometer, it's got some mileage fraud there, so they've clocked it back. Looks like it went up to 40,000, then back down to 30,000. So that's not good, you want to avoid that. That actually happened to the old man. He bought a Ford Mondeo many years ago, thought it was a trustworthy car, went to this massive manor house and picked it up, so he thought, well, it must be all right. And then he got a knock from Trading Standards saying this car has been clocked, did you know? So not very good. And there's also a write-off on this one, so category S, repairable structural damage in 2020. And also you can see photos of when the car was auctioned off. So you've got photos here of 2020 when the car was damaged and in the auctions. It doesn't look too bad. If you know what you're doing, then you could probably repair it. But it's good to know these things, and it's good to know the hidden history of any vehicle you're buying. So if you're interested in finding out more about a vehicle that you own or a vehicle you're thinking of buying, then click the link in the description and use my code Mr. Darcy for 10% off your report. On my ride here today, it's been absolutely freezing. So if you watch my video of this bike arriving, it was 22 degrees when I filmed that video, which was last Tuesday. It's now Monday, the following week, and it's about 7 or 8 degrees today. It's really cold. So went from being sweaty last week to having really cold legs and having to warm up on the engine for 10 minutes before I started filming. But I've done a various mix of riding today, down some B roads, through some lovely villages, and also down a byway. So I've got a really good idea of how this bike feels in various different situations. So if you're going along at 70 miles an hour, motorway speeds, you're in 5th gear, because there's not a 6th gear. it is revving slightly higher than I perhaps want it to be. So ideally I would like a 6th gear, but it's not the end of the world and you could do a longer journey on it and not have any issues. It's just a personal preference. And round the country lanes, the narrow lanes, the single track roads, this bike is really at home. It's beautiful and it's fantastic for exploring. And that's why I make the statement that this could be the ultimate freedom machine, because you can go where you like on it. You can go down these twisty lanes and throw it about. It really loves it. The suspension soaks up any bumps and potholes that are in the lanes. And if you see a grass track road, which I've just been down on a byway, you can just tootle up it and it'll do it fine. Yes, it wouldn't go down something really serious, but your average byway that you see, it could certainly do. If it's very heavily rutted, then perhaps I would avoid it. But that's the beauty of this bike, is that you can really take it within reason wherever you like. Now the byway which I've just been down had a mixture of dry surfaces, rocky parts, some rutted bits and also some puddles and wet mud. And the tyres that come on the Scram are pretty good all-round tyres. They're fantastic on the road and they're great in the dry stuff or the rocky parts of the byways. But when it comes to muddy parts, wet mud and wet grass, they're not so good. So they kind of get clogged up with the mud and then they lose most of their grip. So I would avoid going down any green lanes when it's been raining. I would stick to dry green laning on this bike. It can do it, it's just it's going to be a little bit more tricky. If it's a bit wet, you're going to find it a little bit harder to get up where you're trying to go. The Scram now only costs £4,500 in the UK, brand new. It's £500 off at the moment, which is remarkable. It's just so much bike for the money. And one thing that people always say about Royal Enfields is, oh, the welding's terrible. Well, I see what you mean. It's not the cleanest looking weld. Some of it looks absolutely fine, but there's the odd bit that's a bit of a messy weld. But in terms of strength and everything, there's no issues. It's just the look of it. So for £4,500, I'm not too bothered about that. If I was spending £12,000, then perhaps I would be a bit annoyed about it. But for £4,500, that is really, really inexpensive for a brand new motorcycle, and they're even less second hand. So for me, that's not an issue, and I think everything about this bike is fantastic, apart from a couple of things which I'll go into now. There's only a couple of things that I don't like about this bike. One of them being this seat. It's a good looking seat, but the shape of it, for me, it pushes me forwards into one position. So if I want to move back slightly, which sometimes you do, or for me, my general riding position, I'd like to be maybe 2 inches or 3 inches further back, but it pushes you forwards and it rather squashes your gentleman's area. So if you are a gentleman, then you might have some issues there. And a flat bench seat might be better and probably would look nicer as well, a bit more classic looking if it had a flat bench seat. But for some of you that may not be an issue. For me, that's a little bit annoying. I did find myself getting a bit squashed today. Another thing which I mentioned in my previous video is that the mirrors are, one, they could be wider, and two, they're sort of pointing down for me, which you can adjust. I just haven't done that yet. So really you just need to twist the bars slightly forward or twist these slightly forward and then it would be okay. But even then, they'd need to be a little bit wider for me to see properly behind me. Engine on the Royal Enfield has so much character, as with all the Royal Enfields. It's a lovely, lovely engine. It's 411cc, as the name would entail, and it's a single cylinder and it is air cooled. So it really does have a lot of character and it's got just enough power for this bike. A little bit more might be nice, but I don't think it's necessary. It produces 24.3 brake horsepower at 6,500 RPM and 32 newton meters of torque at 4,250 RPM. And that is plenty enough for the real world, and it's plenty enough for green laning and city commuting and town riding. Perhaps if you're doing a lot of long journeys, it might not be enough for you. So that's the only place it might not be enough. But yeah, these are really lovely engines. The exhaust is quite good looking for a standard exhaust, I think. I would change the end can, perhaps get something a little bit more throaty on there, really open up that engine and hear that lovely single cylinder thump which you get from Royal Enfield. Which reminds me of last week I went to do a bit of shopping in Leicester, and I saw a Sikh gentleman get onto his Royal Enfield Classic 350. It was a really beautiful bike, and you know, he looked really cool getting onto it. Such a cool machine, and it clearly had either the baffles taken out or an aftermarket exhaust. It looked like the standard exhaust. I think it might have had the baffles taken out, but it was such a deep thump, which you don't really expect coming from a 350cc engine. But it sounded amazing, and that's what I would want out of this bike. So if it was up to me, I would change the exhaust just to get a bit more sound. We've all probably heard the rumours that there's a 450 version of this bike coming out. So if you're thinking of buying one of these now, that's probably heavily on your mind. Do I wait to see what gets revealed? And it's that time of year where it's probably going to be revealed in the next month or so, with some serious major bike shows coming up. That's usually when they release these new models. So time will tell exactly what those bikes have going for them, but from the sort of articles and things that I've read, it sounds like it will have a 6th gear, it will have a little bit more power, so it might be the answer to the few little nitpicks that I have for this machine. So I'm very interested to see what they come out with, if it does exist, but going on past rumours, they do tend to be pretty true, so they do tend to come to life. So watch this space and we'll see what they reveal. You've got a single disc brake on the front and the rear. It's perfectly enough for this bike. Perhaps it could do with a little bit more stopping power, but it's just enough. I really like that you've got a cable clutch and a cable throttle. That really keeps you in touch with the machine and you can really feel what it's doing. It's nice to be mechanical, one with the machine, not an electronic aid doing things for you, making things easier. It's nice to just have that old school feel. The suspension is really good. It soaks up bumps on the road, potholes and things very well, and if you've got a speed bump going through a town, you can quite easily go over it without slowing down. If you're doing 25 miles an hour, it would just hop over it. It really just soaks it up. So really impressed with that. And it handles very nicely. And because it's not got loads of power, it's really fun to ride this thing at the edge of its capabilities. You can really wring its neck in and have a lot of fun. And I think that's a lot more fun than riding a bike, like the old man said in his review, that's really powerful, which you can't use on the road. For example, a couple of months ago I rode the Harley Davidson Sportster S, and while it was incredible and exhilarating, you can't use it day to day. I mean, it was an incredibly bumpy ride, so on all the lanes around here it's completely useless. And you can only really use that power on, you know, the bigger, more open roads, which where I live, we don't have many of those. So a bike like this, on roads like this, for exploring and for exploring the beautiful British countryside or Indian countryside or wherever you live, it's just lovely to get out. And I mean, even though it's cold today, I've come to this gated road, so luckily no traffic, so I can film without having to stop start every 5 minutes. And the view is incredible. It really is beautiful. And you just listen, you don't hear any cars. I can hear a plane going over, so it kind of ruins my point. But yeah, it's really beautiful. And there's loads of cows in this field. They were all around here when I started, but they've all gone now. They were over there. But they were very friendly. And they were very interested in this bike, and they licked the indicator a few times. So yeah, the cows love to lick Royal Enfields. If you want to find out what this bike's like with a pillion on the back, then you can go back and watch my previous video. I took my girlfriend out for a ride and she really loved it. She was begging me to go back on the bike and go for another ride. So that's always a good sign. So if you want an excuse to ride, to buy another motorbike, then this is a good one because you can come on the back of it. And this is what I look like sat on the bike. So I'm 6'1". This is what it looks like underneath me. It's very comfortable. I think it's a good riding position for someone over 6 foot. So it's good for taller riders, but I think it'd also be pretty good for slightly shorter riders as well. You shouldn't have any issues, but let me know in the comments below what I look like sat on the bike. Underneath, you've got this metal cover on the bottom to protect the frame. So if you're going over some rocky stuff, then that's pretty good. It also stops lots of mud from getting on the bottom of the engine, which is fantastic. Only problem is there are some gaps there, so if some mud does get in there, it's going to be hard to get underneath that to clean it. But it's nice to have. Tomorrow, as of recording this video, I pick up the Honda CL500. So it's going to be interesting to compare the two. The Honda's £1,500 or £2,000 more than this bike. So I have a feeling I'm going to prefer this because it sort of is more my style. But it'll be interesting to see. So I will do a comparison video between the two and also a review of that bike as well. So stay tuned for that. Also, I'm riding another very interesting bike this week. And again, I'm not going to tell you yet. You'll just have to wait and see. Yeah, I think it's time to head home, get some lunch. I'm going to make some chicken sandwiches.